Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 and a special edition of Story Starters. I'm Leilani, and today I'm rolling solo on this one, so no Sonia today. Story Starters is a webcast conversation about life stories directly from the people who experience them. And October actually happens to be Family History Month and Filipino Heritage Month. So I'm killing two birds with one stone, and today's episode about growing up Filipino or FilipinX in America with my two sisters, Alicia de Leon-Torres and Miriam de Leon, or as I call them, Aki and Miriam. Mimi, Aki. Okay, so let me do them justice and read their bio. Alicia de Leon-Torres and Miriam de Leon are Filipino-Americans that grew up in a U.S. Navy family. And so that meant acclimating to a lot of travel. That was before I came along. They experienced earthquakes in Alaska, tornadoes in Virginia, minefields in Cuba, and sugarcane fields in Hawaii before settling into Mira Mesa, a suburb of San Diego, California. And at the time, it was a sprouting community in the early 1970s, and then it was affectionately known as Manila Mesa by the time they reached high school because of the number of Filipino families that lived there. It bordered Naval Air Station Miramar of Top Gun fame, and many of the families were U.S. Navy families too. They are first generation American born, as their parents were, or our parents were originally from the Philippines. So sometimes there was conflict and confusion. And were they Filipino? Were they American? What does it mean to be Filipino-American? What does that mean and how did they handle it? So today we're going to listen to their stories about growing up Filipino-American in this episode of Story Starters. Welcome, guys.
Hi.
Okay, so the first thing that we do in Story Starters is kind of like a rapid fire question. I'm going to ask you quick questions and you just answer off the top of your head. Don't feel like you have to go into a long tirade or anything like that. You guys ready?
Ready.
Okay. What's your favorite Filipino dish?
Kari kari.
Pancit lug-lug and fresh lumpia.
Okay. What's your favorite American dish?
I was going to say tacos.
Tacos Americanos.
Steak and a baked potato.
Yeah, well done. Well done steak and a baked potato loaded with everything.
Gotcha. What was the Filipino saying you heard most growing up?
That we can say online or on air?
Your face is ugly.
The mumu will get you.
Really? That's what you heard the most?
Yeah, I was the first one. I wouldn't go to bed. Mom and Dad would tell me to get in bed or the mumu would get me.
Oh my God. Okay. Who's your favorite Filipino-American entertainer or athlete?
Joe Coy.
Joe Coy!
Jo Koy and Lea Salonga. She sings like an angel.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. What's the best thing about growing up Filipino?
Family.
Well, there are a lot of things. I think the first thing is our parties have a lot of food, a lot of laughter. Because I remember when we were younger and we'd go to, sorry, Caucasian friends, but Caucasian parties, we'd still be hungry when we left.
Oh,
but
yeah.
in the Filipino house, you'd have to bring containers so that you could take stuff home.
Mimi?
I said family.
What's your favorite? Oh, family. I didn't hear you. Speak up, man.
I said it first even.
Okay.
Family.
What's the worst thing about growing up Filipino?
I'm a heathen. Having to go to church all the time.
It was living in one culture at home and living in another culture at school.
Got it. Okay. Okay, so this part is true or false. All you have to say is true or false. You guys ready?
Ready.
True or false? I can pick up things with my feet.
True.
True.
True or false? I point with my lips.
Sometimes. Because
True
if
or
your
false?
hands are busy,
True or false? I like giving Filipino kisses.
I
the
love
kids.
giving Filipino kisses.
only to the kids that are
So
related to us.
for those of you that don't know, Filipino kisses don't use your lips. You kind of sniff people like on their
Real
head. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Next, I'm going to name some foods, and you tell me which one you like better. Ready? Fried lumpia, fresh lumpia, banana lumpia.
Ooh,
We can't say all of them.
No.
that's a toughie.
Fresh
It
lumpia.
depends on.
No. Pick one.
What do I eat the most? Fried lumpia.
Okay. Adobo or lechon?
Adobo.
Ooh. I would say adobo because lechon we only eat this crunchy skin.
Okay.
You're smart. I always feel guilty when I eat it.
I know.
Okay. Bibinka or kuchinta?
What kind of babinka?
Whatever kind of bibinka you want.
If it's the brown topping
The brown
of
babinka.
sticky rice that mom made, that.
The kind of babinka at Manila Sunset. The one that's like a cake with the banana.
Yeah, and then you put the fresh coconut on.
Ooh,
Yeah. Would you like some bibinka with that coconut?
Okay, and then the last one, halo halo or boba.
Halo halo.
I know boba's not Filipino, but
Halo halo. But
What
no
did
beans for me.
And you know what I've noticed lately? Some places have been putting boba in the halo halo. No me gusta. Keep them separate.
okay. Now we're gonna go a little bit deeper and actually ask you some real questions. So there's no right or wrong answer. It's really based on your own experience and what your story is growing up. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Ready.
Okay, so we're going to start with Alicia since she's the eldest, and then maybe you can chime in. So the first question is, describe the landscape of your childhood, your family and friends. Did you mostly hang out with other Filipino kids? What was it like growing up?
Well, it depends where we were. My first language was actually Spanish because when I was young and starting to speak, we were in Oxnard, California, and all of our neighbors were Mexican. So and then mom and dad had to, they spoke Tagalog. That's why I understand Tagalog more than the two of you. Miriam only knows the dirty words and some other words. I don't know Spanish very much anymore unless it's probably dirty, kind of like, or something regular. The other thing is that the landscape is that most of mom and dad's friends were Filipino, unless we were on base, and then a lot of them were Caucasian. So we had a mixed bag of friends because a lot of them on base in Cuba and in Hawaii, in Washington State, in Virginia, they were mostly, the one in the middle with the three of us that was in Cuba. The one on the right with Miriam and I, that's in Hawaii. So anyways, so it depends. Most of our friends were Filipino or Caucasian. As far as the landscape, mom and dad tried to make sure that we had regular childhoods, even though we had to always have a suitcase pack like in Cuba in case Fidel Castro decided to bomb us. Mom made sure we always had food, even though at that time I didn't know that we were poor because we were enlisted people. So she'd make me stretch out. We lived in a garage the first time we moved to Oxnard. I did not know that.
What about you, Mimi? What do you remember about growing up?
Oh my gosh, I had a great childhood. I think I have to agree with Alicia that it really depended on where we lived as far as the landscape. But my earliest memories were in Cuba. I didn't know who we were hanging around with, but I do remember lots of parties. And in Hawaii, heavily Asian Islander, very diverse group of people that we grew up with. I did not feel out of place at all. Although at one point I wish that my eyes were a little bit more slanted because I felt like they weren't slanted enough in Hawaii. And then when we moved to California, again, it was very, very diverse. lived in Mira Mesa, a ton of Filipinos, a ton of other ethnicities because it was heavily military dependent. And I just had a great time hanging out with all of them and being able to participate in all the parties growing up because our mom loved to party and she loved having lots of friends and she loved, sharing food with everybody. She would invite all the neighbors, whether they were Filipino or not. And so just everybody came. And that was the best part.
Got it.
And
So
we go fishing.
what were key ways in which mom and dad perpetuated the culture, Filipino culture, growing up?
Aside from food?
Yeah. Or whatever you think, like, what is the ways that they perpetuate the culture? I mean, food is an everyday thing, right? So anything else?
Well, I think that, the food goes hand in hand with the hospitality, which I think the Filipino culture is known for, is the hospitality, but also they perpetuated the culture through church. We were heavily involved with the church. Mom was involved with the choir, went to church every Sunday. We had, I don't even know what you call them, but we had like roving rosary parties where we would go from house to house, especially when I was out of town. You guys would go house to house, bring
Out of
the
town.
rosary. Yeah.
Out of town.
I think the other ways that mom and dad perpetuated the culture is that whenever someone comes to your house, you don't send them away. You invite them in, kind of like vampires, you invite them in. And then whatever food you have, you offer food. If you don't have any food prepared, you prepare the food. You don't take no for an answer. If they say, no, I'm not hungry, you make them eat. The other thing that perpetuated the house, our culture, is that that sign of respect to the elders, not just the mano. It's also
Can you
that.
describe for people who aren't Filipino what mano means?
So a mano po means, you take the hand of the elder and they bless you. Look, I have gray roots. Anyways, anyways, you also show them respect by acknowledging when they've entered a room. You call them auntie or uncle, even though you're not directly related to them. Everybody who is older and someone else's grandma or grandpa, you also call them lolo and lola. Oh, there's Lola.
Yeah, so I wanted to add this to the conversation because for many Filipino families, right, your grandparents typically live with you. Our grandparents are Lola or Lolo. For us, we had our Lola that lived with us for a long, long time before she passed. Okay, keep going.
Oh, one thing I want to add, speaking of vampires, they perpetuated the superstitions.
Yes,
so
they did.
Passed down information about all the Filipino monsters like the mumu and what are they called? The dueños
Duende.
duendes that lived in the termite mounds and getting lost and putting your clothes inside out and like the big giant black moth that comes to your house. So we grew up hearing about all those things and we are all terrified.
Yeah. So the thing about that is when two things about the superstition is that when I told mom the date that Tony and I were getting married, she looked at the calendar and made us change the wedding date because the moon was getting smaller. And she said, if you get married when the moon is smaller, which is after between the full moon and the new moon, your marriage won't be abundant. And then she also, when we were moving into our new apartment when we got married, she made us take everything out because you have to first bring salt to ward off the evil spirits, coins to make sure there's abundance in the house, rice so that you'll always have food, which didn't always work, a broom to sweep away to sweep away the spirits again. And I forgot what the other thing was.
I thought it was only the 3. I never heard of the broom.
Yeah, she bought us a walis ting ting, which is kind of made out of
It was to
What?
spank somebody with.
Okay, next question. So, did you feel different from other kids when you were growing up?
not until we moved to San Diego, and we were of the dating age, because mom and dad, especially mom, did not want us to date until we graduated from college, which took me a long time.
Which we didn't do that.
We didn't do that. They also didn't want us. Well, mom allowed us to date more than one person. Dad said, I remember this, we were in the car after church, and dad turned around while he was driving and said, Alicia, people don't like girls who date more than one boy. And I just remember thinking, what? What are you talking about? Yes, I dated more than one guy. Doesn't mean I slept with them, but yeah.
All righty. How about you, Mimi?
I
Did
would
you?
say the timeline is about right. I didn't feel any different. I think maybe because my age in Cuba and Hawaii. When we got to Mira Mesa, there were, like you said, it was called Manila Mesa at the time, and there were tons of Filipinos over there. So I didn't feel super different, and all of my non-Filipino friends were just friends regardless of their ethnicity. I was at everybody's house. I was playing at everybody's house, eating at everybody's house. So I don't feel like I was treated any differently by anybody else. But I think the difference came at home, because there are certain things that I think are common among all immigrants. And it's just that immigrant parents are not aware of the things that kids in America do. They're not aware, of signing their kids up for a softball team or Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or any of those, group activities. So as a child, of an immigrant, you have to be really proactive in getting your parents to allow you to participate and sign you up. So I think for me, I knew of these things. Maybe I wasn't proactive enough. I think I expressed interest, but I didn't get to do anything that I wanted to do, because Filipino parents try to steer you into playing the piano, which I did not enjoy. I wanted to play the drums. They didn't allow that at all. They were not entertaining that idea. I wanted to play ball. They wanted to steer you towards doing things that were more ladylike. So I think there was a lot of things that we didn't get involved in just because they were not aware or weren't comfortable with the idea.
Yeah, go ahead, Alicia.
That and it continued until we were all older. For example, one of the things is that we knew when mom and or dad were mad, because what may not have been loud, but it was so quiet. There was tension. You could cut the tension with a knife, and we'd automatically walk in the house and start cleaning because we knew that would make them happy.
By the time I came along, I think if mom was mad, it was loud.
It was loud. And we didn't start cleaning to make them happy. It was mom.
And then I think the other thing that was different is we were allowed to go to any college as long as the college was in San Diego, which is why when my daughter decided to go to college, when she wanted to go to San Diego, I was like, are you sure? San Diego State? But she did. And when she wanted to go to get her master's degree, she left for the United Kingdom. So I was like, yay! She gets to do something we didn't get to do.
Well, I think for us, especially growing up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, maybe you hit on something that was very real for us is that, the generation of our parents that came here, right? They were hard workers. They worked at home and it was all about family. And then when you come to America and you're raising kids here, there's a lot of community and a lot of things around raising the kids and those activities like the sports, baseball or soccer or whatever, which they weren't open to because it was still around the family and culture through piano or violin or music in some way, and then also helping around the house, getting good academic grades. Those other things weren't important. It wasn't a priority for them.
Well, also Filipinos, which is why it was difficult to live in two different cultures, one at home and then the more American culture at school, is because at school in an American culture, it's what you can bring to your own life. It's the individual. What good can you do for yourself, for the individual? Whereas as in the Filipino culture is what can you bring to the family?
So did you struggle with cultural identity? Did you embrace it? Did you have like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, where you're one identity at school, where you're American, and then at home, you're like the good Filipino kid? Did you guys feel that at all?
I think I strongly rebelled against that. I didn't like playing piano. I didn't like being ladylike. I like to, be out playing with the rest of the kids. And while I was smart, I didn't necessarily, embrace the academics. And so I think I did have a problem with identity. I did not really embrace the way the Filipino kids live their lives. I wasn't interested in super nice clothes. I wasn't interested in materialistic things. And I started gravitating towards other cultures. And I started doing naughty things and, not, being anti-school and anti-establishment and all that stuff. And I wanted to be the opposite of the obedient child.
And that goes back to the culture, right? The obedient Filipino child, right? Because of the way you're being raised by Filipino parents.
Right.
Yeah, for me,
we always heard growing up, you can't leave the house until you're married or you're finished with college. And I asked that question when I was like 10 years old, when can I leave the house? And that was the answer I kept getting, when you get married or when you finish college. Well, in my mind, college wasn't coming first. Actually, at that point, it wasn't coming at all until way later. But yeah, I was just like, when can I get out of this?
Okay, what about you, Alicia?
Can you please repeat the question?
Did you ever struggle with cultural identity?
Yes. And my friends were allowed to go into majors in college that they chose. Mom and dad were like other Filipinos. Accounting is nice. Nursing is nice. Well, blood really, I wasn't good at numbers. Blood makes me faint. So that's not a good thing. Being a lawyer, and I have a conscience, sorry lawyer friends, that if I probably would have gone into criminal law, and if they're guilty, I'm going to say they're guilty. I'm not representing them. I would have been very poor. So that was an issue. The other thing about cultural identity is that I grew up at a time when other Filipinos around me were struggling with cultural identity. We didn't know where we landed, and part of it is because of the colonialism. We were conquered by Spain. Japan came over. The U.S. came over, so we were just confused. Parts of me did struggle with identity, and other parts didn't. It depended what was important to mom and dad. And for mom and dad, family was important. So that part I didn't struggle with. But as far as doing things I wanted to do, I struggled with. The other thing is I wanted to run for office in high school, like ASB, and even in elementary school. And mom and dad said no. They didn't want my feelings hurt. Part of the thing that they instilled in me, and I had a hard time getting rid of, is you don't rock the boat. And they didn't want us to be disappointed if we lost. And it wasn't till later I thought, I could have won. Why didn't they let me go for that? So, yeah. Oh, that, and people kept saying, you don't look Filipino, you look Chinese. No, I don't.
One thing I want to add, though, is, kind of like piggybacking on what Alicia was saying, is that there was, other than at home, there was nothing to reinforce our cultural identity. And still to this day, like back in the 70s, the only minorities that you saw on TV were Black people or Latino people. Like we used to watch stuff like Good Times and Chico and the Man. You didn't even see any other Asians on TV. So I think for us, it was like, well, hey, those are the closest things to us. So we're going to kind of like, watch those shows and gravitate to those shows. And it's nice to see that, you have people out there like Joe Coy and Manny Pacquiao and Rex Navarrete, and that the kids nowadays can look up to.
Yeah, I think that, you're right. A lot of people of color, right? As if you don't see yourself in places to aspire to, it doesn't seem attainable, either in entertainment or in politics or, even in an executive level in a company. And, I hope we continue to make strides in that. But I want to talk a little bit about what you said, Alicia, about family, because I think that is one of the core values of being Filipino, is that I always hear from all of my friends, and even within our own family, right? It's family comes first, whether you like it or not, family comes first. And whether that's, getting together for holidays or every Sunday for family meals, or, making priority calls on what do you do from going to vacation or taking a job. It really depends on what your family is about and that. Another thing is being supportive and being a supportive community of each other. And I know this for sure based on Mimi, because every time she finds out an athlete or an entertainer or a music person is Filipino, even if they don't outwardly look Filipino, but she's like, oh, they're half Filipino, I like them immediately, regardless of their personality, right? Because you want to be supportive of people in the community because they're like you, they're part of your culture, and I think you are happy that they kind of made it. Would you say that's true, Mimi?
I would say that's true. I know a lot of Filipinos, like, will talk about the crab mentality, but I don't think that that's true. I think that if somebody in the Filipino community has made it, I think, that reflects on all of us and that we're all proud of that person.
Yeah.
I've seen and experienced the crab mentality, so it does exist. But Filipinos are also enamored with glamour. So I'm not saying Miriam is enamored with glamour, but they like what's sparkly, hence all the gold. But also, if someone has a sparkly personality or they've achieved fame, because we've been without it for so long as a community, we tend to gravitate towards that person. In Hawaii, I think what was the biggest shock was in Hawaii, on the commercials, on televisions, a lot of people look similar to us. We watched Japanese and Chinese ghost stories. On the McDonald's, we had Portuguese sausage, egg, and rice, and everybody kind of looked similar to us. And then we get here, and everybody does not look like us. So it was really difficult. And I would tell people back then in the mid 70s, people would say, what are you? Where are you from? And I'd say, I'm Filipino. Where's that? And I would have to point to the Philippines on the map, and still people would say, okay, I don't get it. So then say, well, before you came here, where did you come from? Oh, we moved here from Hawaii. Oh, so you're Hawaiian. No, we're not Hawaiian. But nice try. So
I want to touch a little bit on
Oh.
recently you guys went to the Philippines. I know this was like the first time in probably over 40 years, maybe even closer to 50 years that you guys had been back to the Philippines. And I want to chat a little bit more about what were your preconceived notions going in, especially you, Mimi, because I think you didn't have as much experience and exposure, right? And then what it was like for you. What did you think it was going to be like? And then what was it like when you actually got there?
Well, for me, I was terrified for decades to go to the Philippines. I think the last time we had gone, I was 5 years old. You were still a baby, Lonnie. And what I remember was being eaten alive by mosquitoes and vermin and the province and just, I mean, I think I had fun, but there were things I think that mildly traumatized me. So, and then going through the years, hearing about the terrorists and the rebels and parasites and disease and poverty and all that stuff just kind of like built up my terror as far as going. I think the catalyst to make the decision to go is that we really didn't know our father's side of the family, and one of the few first cousins that we had left had recently passed away. So I felt like, you know, we really needed to make an effort to go back to the motherland. And when we went back there, I fell in love with it. I love my family there. My dad's side of the family rolled out the red carpet for us. They were so warm and loving. And even though with some of them, there was a bit of a language barrier because I don't speak Tagalog at all. And I only understand a few key phrases like come and eat, stuff like that. Even though there was a little bit of a language barrier, we were able to bridge the gap with lots of hugs and kisses and just being, you know, loving to our family members. We got to see different parts of the Philippines. We got to meet a cousin that lived on Palawan, and we got to see how much of an American influence is in the Philippines still to this day. It was just great just spending that time with our family, bonding with them, karaokeing. I did karaoke for the first time in my whole life. Not that I was great or anything, but I did it. And Alicia said that I kind of stayed on key. But it was great. It was a great experience. It's a beautiful country, beautiful beaches, very tropical, very islandy. Eco-diverse. They got saltwater crocodiles. There's just so much to say, and I can't even put all of it into words.
I think though, I remember you telling me though that you didn't necessarily blend in as a Filipino, right?
Well, I'm a little bit on the tall side, and I am kind of like have a solid build. So yeah, I'm like a little bit larger than the average Filipino, especially the women. They're all petite and dainty.
I wasn't talking about your physical appearance.
Well, and yeah. So I had been there 2 or 3 years prior for work. And that was the first time I had been there since I was in elementary school. So that was a shock, but I think it was hilarious. Like Miriam said, you know, the best part of going back to the Philippines was staying with family, visiting with family, bonding. But there were funny things that happened. For example, when we first landed, there were 2 places when you go through immigration. One said Filipino and one said others. And then Miriam asked me, should we go to the Filipino one? I'm like, no, they mean citizenship. So we're Americans, right? American citizens. So we had to go there. And then And then she goes, should we show our ID? And I was like, no, they're not even looking. They were busy on their phone looking. But that was our first foray into being reminded in the Philippines, we are not thought of as Filipinos. We're thought of as American first. The second thing that happened was when we were in Palawan, we were staying at a hotel. And the hotel people, they decided what you were going to eat for breakfast based on how they perceived you. So even though, again, we thought of ourselves as Filipino, they said we were foreigners. So they told us what we were going to eat for breakfast, even though we wanted longanisa and rice. We got,
It was toasted.
I don't know what. It was,
Like,
You know what?
toasted ham? Sheesh.
we got toast and ham.
Eesh.
And so we had to have Sheila, our cousin, tell them, we're Filipino. And they argued with her saying, no, they're not Filipino, they're foreigners. So this is what they get for breakfast. That was not fun. The other thing that reminded us that we were more American than Filipino is that the look we would get from people who were not part of our family. And Miriam alluded to it, that we did not look, we didn't carry ourselves like Filipinos from the Philippines. We didn't look like a lot of the Filipinos who live in the Philippines. There was something different about us. They knew we were American Filipinos before words came out of our mouth. So maybe it's the way we dressed. I don't know. Or we perspired easily or something.
Ooh, it was hot. It was so humid. Another thing is, like, there in the Philippines, there's a ton of dogs and nobody is nice to them. They just run around and nobody kisses their dogs. Nobody holds and pets their dogs. They're just dogs.
Yeah, we were petting and kissing and holding the dogs, and our cousins said that they don't have rabies shots. We don't care. So yeah.
Don't care till they bite.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
The other thing was when we first landed, we wanted Filipino food, and they wanted to take us to Italian. And we said, we wanted Filipino. I guess they didn't understand that part of our experience, what we wanted to experience, was an immersion into everything that were comfort to us, like food. We asked for kare-kare, so they brought us to Max's.
Well,
it
depends on the food.
Yeah. I want to go back and something that we didn't touch on. So for everybody watching, I know I mentioned we were sisters. Alicia's the oldest, so she's the ate. We call her Ati. It took me forever to figure out that her name was not Ati. and then Mimi came 5 years later. 4 years later. And then so she's in the middle, and then I'm the bunso, I'm the youngest, and I came 5 years after Mimi. But I think one of the things, especially because when we came to San Diego, and now we were all of school age, is that one thing I noticed that, even with other Filipino families, not everybody, but a majority of them, is that our parents didn't speak to us in Tagalog. They consciously spoke to us in English and didn't really teach us the native tongue because they wanted us to acclimate into American schools. They didn't want a reason for others to make fun of us. At least that's how I look at it. I'm the youngest, so I would love to get your guys' perception on even the language. I know, Alicia, you know fluently Tagalog understanding, but you don't speak it. Mimi only knows the bad words. And then I know a little bit here and there, but tell me a little bit about that struggle, because I know when I go out and meet Filipinos anywhere in the world, they'll immediately like, oh my gosh, are you Filipina? It's kind of like that, hey, you're in the club thing, right? And then they break out into Tagalog, and I'm like, lo siento.
English.
I don't speak Tagalog, and then they're like flabbergasted that I don't speak Tagalog. I mean, is that your guys' same experience, or was it different because of the different places we came in the family?
I think part of it's age, because a lot of people my age in their 50s, now, whose parents were of the immigrant generation, that there was still Tagalog in the home, and we still at parties they spoke Tagalog. So, I was immersed in the Tagalog language, so I understand Tagalog fluently. I can read it, cannot write it at all, and I speak like a 2-year-old, very slow. But what's good about the two things, the one thing was it if you don't know the language, or if you don't understand the language very well, then you're left out of a lot of conversations when you go to the Philippines. I mean, a lot of Filipinos do speak English, and they want to practice English on you when you first arrive. So that, and then we're trying to get them to speak Tagalog to us so that we can get immersed in the language more. But when we were in Palawan again with one of our cousins, Miriam was extremely quiet. Miriam is not a quiet person, for those of you who know her. And I had forgotten to translate the entire 6 hours from, I think, El Nido to where our cousins live in southern Philippines. So it does help. And also, if people are talking about you, don't tell them you understand Tagalog, because then you can eavesdrop. And the reason I say that is because I've been to places even in my last hospitalization in June, where they were speaking Tagalog. Oh, she's not Filipino, she's Chinese, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm Filipino. You can actually eavesdrop. So it's fun. The other thing is when your mom and dad, our mom and dad, tell us, oh, those things aren't true. And then you can hear them speaking to friends and relatives that, yes, it's true. There are ghosts out there. And I saw one last night. It's good to know the language.
What about you, Mimi?
I think for me, coming along 4 years after Alicia, I had a very different experience because I didn't catch any of that Tagalog at all. Now, mom and dad did speak Tagalog at home to each other, but they didn't speak Tagalog a whole lot to us kids. And so if they were speaking to each other, I just didn't even pay attention. And when I asked mom, a couple of times throughout my life, like, why didn't you ever teach us Tagalog? She said it was because she didn't want us to be confused. Apparently, friends of theirs had a son who they spoke both English and Tagalog to him, and he got confused. Now, that doesn't mean that all kids will get confused. Maybe that kid just wasn't too sharp, but she always told us, or told me, that she didn't want us to be confused. I do not understand even conversational Tagalog. So for that 4 days in Palawan, I was the quietest I've ever been in my entire life. And Lonnie, you're right. When we go to anywhere and we see another Filipino, the first thing they want to do when they find out if we're Filipino is speak Tagalog to us. And even those guys that have the Filipino fetish, if they see us and they make a beeline towards us, they try to throw out some Tagalog to us. And I don't even know what the hell they're talking about. So I would like to learn as an adult. I would like to learn, and I've tried to take little classes that the community has offered. But for whatever reason, it just doesn't stick to me. I don't know why.
Oh, one more thing on language for you non-Filipinos who try to throw some Tagalog at us when you first meet us. Please do not immediately say mahal kita, because no, you don't. First of all, and second, that is a horrible pickup line.
Can you translate that for people who don't know?
So mahal kita is like, you mean a lot to me. I love you. It's like, we just met. Go back, and learn some other Tagalog. But the literal translation is a mahal, which means worth a lot, and kita, you. So,
is that
that is a horrible pickup line. Stop it.
That's cute.
No, it's not.
Okay. All right. So my last question. So for the Filipino kids today, the ones who were probably American born, from our generation, What do you hope they carry forward from our culture?
I hope they carry forward the sense of family and the sense of community. And what I mean by that is growing up, like Lonnie said, whether you were related to us or not, we considered a lot of people our uncles, our aunties, and their kids kind of like our cousins. I hope they carry that forward, that sense of community and family. And I would hope that they become more adventurous and pursue their dreams, and that they're just a little bolder than our generation.
How about you, Alicia?
Well, first of all, I think that our generation, who have who have children, and or our teachers, and maybe not have children, I hope that they actively teach Filipino-American culture to their kids. Their kids are not going to learn the culture by osmosis. You actually have to teach them. Mom tried to teach Ariana some Tagalog, and I had to, before Ariana went to pre-kinder, I had to tell her the body parts in English because she only knew the Tagalog words. And she just thought the word armpit was ridiculous. And she wanted to teach everybody the word kilikili. So you have to actively teach the culture. You have to do it in a manner that's appealing to them, not lecture them. I remember being at a workshop, and there were some kids who were part of a Filipino dance troupe here in San Diego, who were chastising other Filipino kids for not knowing the Filipino culture or the Filipino-American culture. That's not how you instill the love of culture or in other people. That's how you show your thought that you're superior to other people in your knowledge. So that's not a good thing. I hope that our generation is good at documenting and storytelling to the younger generation, not just about stories about aswang, duende, carabao, whatever, but about our own family. Like, I love the fact that Lonnie, you, and also Miriam, and me to a point, are trying to document our family history, so that we can pass that along to the kids, so that they will know where they came from, why they came, and what was important to us, and what is still important to us.
Yeah, and I think that that's what I'm really trying to do and inspire through my legacy, which is, the company that I recently started. It really is about taking your own life story and your own experiences and documenting that and sharing it. And even our lives are ongoing, but being able to tell your stories as you live your life. Because I think, all three of us were of the same family. We do the same things, but we've all experienced them in different ways, because your point of view, Alicia, is different than your point of view, maybe, than is my point of view. So even if we have a collective memory of how we grew up, their experiences and the point of views are separate. So for those of you out there who agree and would love to see my legacy come to fruition, of course, join our wait list. Sorry, I had to add that in there. But, I think for me, like you were saying, Alicia, it's really important to do that. Given I have two teenage kids at home. And for me, I kind of struggled with my cultural identity growing up. So it's really hard to carry forward your culture from a Filipino perspective, because I'm purely Filipino-American. I'm American born. I was American raised. I look Filipino, and I have some of that Filipino value and culture, but it's hard to extend that to my kids when I don't really understand the full value of it myself. So I do that through food, even though we were so bad and didn't pay attention to how mom cooked Filipino food. And so we're like, and, kind of that storytelling. But even with some of those stories, it's hard to recall. That's why I think, to your point, Alicia, it's so important to document it and write it down and share it with the kids, because their experience is going to be the same. And over time, unfortunately, I think culture can be greatly diluted, which is not something that we want. Before we go, I do want to share this picture or pictures. I want to show the people out there our love for humor. I think that came from our parents, but it's really all about a picture is worth 1,000 words and stories. So please tell us the stories on these two pictures.
Well,
anytime there's any kind of cutout or any like prop that we can put our faces in, we have got to do it. I don't care if you put your face in a cutout corn dog at the Delmar Fair, or you put your face in these bats. It's like we're drawn to it, like a moth to a flame. We've got to put our faces in there and take a picture. That picture of the bats, we were in Wild Animal Park, and you should have seen how excited we were when we saw that.
it's one of my favorite pictures.
Yeah.
The other picture, we were in London. It's Miriam's first time in the United Kingdom. I had been there a few times before. So she had to try everything out. If it was more than, like 100 years old, she had to touch it. So things were 1,000, 2,000, 5,000. She touched it. And then this was at not Windsor Castle, but the tower. What's it called?
The Tower.
The Tower.
Yeah, the Tower of London.
The Tower of London. And then she saw that you could have a crown without actually having a crown. So she goes, "Take my picture, take my picture."
Yeah, the crown appeared like a mirror and hovered, and you just put your head wherever the crown was.
Got it.
Saying hello to her subjects.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So one of the things that, real quick, that what my friends have noticed is that we're a close family. We may not see each other all the time now because of COVID, but they were a close family. We still like to travel with each other. When it was pre-COVID, we still like to meet for meals. And part of it was our promise to our mom that we would still spend time with each other at least once a month, that we would celebrate holidays together, and remember that we're family.
Can I add one more thing?
Sure.
I wanted to add something that Mom said a long time ago. When it comes to just revisiting the cultural identity thing, there's so many people out there that are so quick to define who you are as a Filipino. They want to tell you that you're not Asian enough, that you're not Islander enough, that you're not American enough, that you're not Filipino enough. But our mom always said, we have our own definition, and to carry all the best things that we have of being a Filipino forward, and to teach that to future generations, and to not let anybody else define who we are. That's it.
Okay. Good comment. And on that note, this was a great conversation. I think we could talk for hours and hours on end on our experiences and our stories, but of course, it kind of has to come to an end. So I thank you all. Thank you both for being guests on Story Starters. And everybody out there watching, we hope that you enjoy this episode. It is brought to you by My Legacy, where we want to bring authentic stories from everyday people. So to learn more and join the wait list, go to my-legacy.com. And October is Family History Month. So go out and talk to your families, talk to your parents, talk to your grandparents, talk to your uncles and cousins, and really appreciate those stories that are part of your family. And October is also Filipino Heritage Month. So if you have a connection to the Filipino culture, you're Filipino yourself, you're Filipino-American, or you have the love of Filipino culture, embrace that. And again, share stories with each other. Thank you both for being a part of Story Starters. And as you know, we all have a story to tell, and we would love to know yours. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.